Well, good evening. I am Amber Gunst. I'm the CEO of Austin Technology Council, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to our March CEO conversations, and even more excited to pass the reins over to Lauren Creel. She is a partner with Kieley Law Firm. And so, Lauren, I'm going to give it all to you.
Amber, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I have the pleasure of introducing the two CEOs who will be the co-chairs of the talk tonight. And we're going to be talking about, as kind of the backdrop, the fantastic article that Scott had out in Medium about the snowpocalypse that you all lived through about 2 weeks ago now. As short bios for their two talkers. So Scott's the CEO and co-founder of VB3 Global. It's a provider of intelligent process automation solutions and services. He's also the president, the board of the Magellan International School, and he's also on the board of the Austin Tech Council. And then Tom is the CEO and co-founder of SourceSafe, a supply chain performance software that bridges the gap between enterprise resource planning and the supplier network. Tom previously worked for Azure Software, Actian, and Dell, including as an operations supervisor for Dell Manufacturing. So without further ado, I'll let our two CEOs kick off the conversation.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, and Tom, we were just chatting the other day, but it's it was just a little over a year ago when we first met, actually, at another ATC event.
In person, no less, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very weird when the only interaction we had was at an in-person event, and then here we are on video.
Yeah, not from our homes with fake backgrounds or
right.
Partially real.
Yes, I decided to go with the picture I took, the Monday of snowpocalypse week, or the snowvid, depending on what you want to call it. So, just walked out into the street early that morning, and before any cars had gone by or people had walked by, I had to take a picture of, how is this our street, right? It just looks like a field, of snow.
Looks like a beautiful day in Colorado.
Right. Exactly. I think for folks who haven't lived in Austin or in parts further south, right, they can't quite imagine how unprepared a city like Austin is for for that kind of event. It's a bit like living in Florida and having this sort of thing happen. You just none of the preparation is there.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you and I both have been in Austin for about roughly the same period. I've been here since '89. And I think I can only count a handful of times that we saw snow at all, much less 8 to 10 inches. And I have fond childhood memories of going down the Murchison Hill during the ice storms. But which would have been fun had you been able to get there during this storm.
That's right. I saw a couple of people with a snowboard going around our neighborhood looking for a good hill to snowboard down, which I thought was pretty intrepid. Not something I would have thought of, on the day of. But yeah, I showed up in Austin back in '94, and yeah, I don't remember a time ever seeing this much snow in Austin. But the funny situation we're in, Tom, where even before all the snow hit, we were already stuck working from home for the most part in Austin and around the world, but in particular in the U.S. And I know for our business, right, at BP3, we're a consulting business. We travel a lot generally. We haven't been the last year, but in normal times we're traveling a lot. We're very distributed. So we're used to working remotely, if not from the home office, from a hotel, from a client's office, from our own offices here in Austin. I guess, I'm curious, how was that for you guys? Before the snow showed up, how are you guys working through COVID and coping with, working remotely? Or were you doing something different in your office?
Yeah, no, I think, we're a much earlier stage company, right? Our company's been with customers in production for just over 5.5 years or so now. So we're still pretty early stage, and our culture has always been one of in-person collaboration. At our core, we're a collaboration platform. So we, work really closely together, and, we're still a small team, roughly of 65 people, primarily here in Austin, Texas. So, it was a tough transition for us, as it was for everyone, to really figure out how to do business remotely. So I think it was certainly a test of our culture and a test of our values. And I was really incredibly proud of our team, right? As small as we had many leaders step up, and our Source Day Cares Culture Committee was able to pull together a Slack channel where we were still able to, come together and give back to the community in a number of ways throughout COVID. And while we couldn't do it in person like we used to do with events, we were able to still really, kind of maintain our core values. I think the biggest change that we saw, right, we were able to move home very well. I think for the most part, the salespeople felt it the worst, right? They're extroverted. They're, they want to be face to face with people every day. They want to be loud and energetic, and appreciate that about all of them. I was a salesperson most of my career as well, and just being in person is really how I thrive. For many of the others in our organization, they can get more work done, more effectively in a quiet environment when they're not in an office environment. So I think our organization, fared incredibly well through that. What I found to be most interesting is our customers are almost all entirely manufacturers, either distributors, manufacturers, consumer product groups, but at the end of the day, they have to be in person. So, through March and April and May, we watched our customers and our organizations that we support go for the first time, for many of them in 100-plus-year-old organizations, to entirely remote operations, minus the few that they had, still maintaining minimal production lines. So it was interesting to watch that happen, and how everyone was able to come together because of technology and strong cultures mostly. But I'd love to hear how your organization fared and how you managed through it as well.
Yeah, I remember a year ago, it was, the week on which March 8th fell. I can't remember what day of the week it was, but, it was our last week of any travel in the company. We had, we decided the Friday before that we were not going to schedule any more travel. And we had two people who were already scheduled to travel and decided they were going to go anyway, do their last trip and then come home. And so it was kind of this strange thing where everybody just sort of, initially we're like, well, we'll just work, we'll stay in Austin, we won't travel. And then, within a few days after that, we said, well, we're not even going into the office. And you could go back in to the office 3 months later and find the same writing on the white. It was like a time capsule of what was on the whiteboard, for March 7th or whatever, right? And it was still there exactly as is, to-dos for the next week and the whole 9 yards. And I took pictures of, done. My whiteboard, so I'd remember what to follow up on when I went home to work. But I know for a few of our clients, we're in the same situation, right? Where parts of their business could easily adapt and work remotely, and other parts they had to be in person to get the work done, to lay hands on equipment or work together on things. And just the nature of the work. We have telecom customers, for example. Well, they're still sending out service crews, during the pandemic, and there's some cultural challenges there too, right? Because some of those clients really want people on site, but at the same time, just the reality of the situation, nobody could really travel. So it's been an interesting thing to work through for us. But I think overall, just the clamp down on business travel really helped make the being on site or off site thing an easier decision, right? And I think for most of our clients, they could say, okay, just be remote. And there was some extra work to do. We had to get set up for the VPN access. Sometimes we had to get laptops. There were some things like that weren't sorted out in advance because we weren't necessarily expected to be remote in advance, but we got all that worked out. I'm curious, Tom, with some of your clients, being in manufacturing, did they need or expect you guys to, show up on site and be there if they felt like they had to be, right? Did you have any of that sort of, tension?
Yeah, no, honestly, we were such an in-person culture, even in our sales process, right? We're selling to organizations that, sometimes struggle to adopt technology and change management, right? So we always made it a point to be on site in our sales process early on. And, through COVID, the risk was so high for them. They didn't want third-party vendors on site unless it was absolutely necessary, right? And we're still finding that today, right? Because, even just one, positive test case being in their environment can have a ripple effect that ultimately can shut down their production, right? and cause disastrous impact. So despite our, our wishes and our hopes, like we've tried to go on site to a couple of customers. We've actually been to a handful, but only into their offices, not into their facilities. But they've maintained really well. Even many of our local customers, have success stories where they thrived through COVID, mostly because they had adopted technology, not to tout our platform, but a technology like ours and others like yours, where it enabled them to be remote for the first time in their existence and actually still function proactively and really be effective from anywhere, despite what their historical cultures had been. So, for us, we love being in front of our customers and our prospects. That's hopefully in our future again in the very near term. But for now, I've not been on site to see a customer in over 12 months. But we did have a very large prospect that's local here in Austin that we're working with come on site last week, which was really exciting to have some face-to-face for the first time in over 12 months. So I think we're getting closer. I think it's a long road of recovery, I think, but hopefully we'll get back to some sense of normalcy in that.
Yeah, no, our I noticed the same thing with our sales team. They seem to be just emotionally impacted the most by not being able to connect with people in person, and even if they were effective, they just weren't satisfied with, how they could prospect, and how they could work with clients only on video. Although I think at this point, the adaptation has been really good. And, you raised a really good point with our clients, the couple of clients who, really struggled with wanting to work on site despite the conditions. I think they have pivoted to that. No, actually, I don't want the risk of you being on site, right? I'll take the risk of our own people being on site, but not outside vendors and whatnot. So I think I'm looking forward to that changing as people get vaccinated and, can show, kind of proof of vaccination, that sort of thing. I think that'll really help kind of mitigate that. But you raised an interesting point there around the technology. I think for our clients, one of the things I worried about at the beginning of COVID was, would business really withdraw, right? Would we lose projects and things like that because of just the unknown, right? Fear of the unknown. Maybe everybody pulls their oars in and just tries to ride it out, right? And hope for the best. And I think one thing that reflects the challenge that all these businesses face is our experience with our clients, for the most part, is that they doubled down on what they were doing. They focused on the automation elements, the things that would allow them to work more effectively remotely. Some of those things people are, think of automatically, like using Zoom or having VPN access and things like that. But a big part of it is just basic business operations. How much of that stuff is handing paper around or talking, in person to get it done versus an orchestrated process or an automated process? And so we saw our clients continue to invest in automation and then double down on it. When those budgets ran out, then they would go and find more budget to keep investing in automation and productivity to kind of enhance that remote work experience. Are you seeing that same kind of trend with sourcing and the supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, even deeper, more than ever, right? I think while COVID was and is a tragedy, we've been able to leverage our platform and other technology that we use and resell and operate under as well, that has helped not just Zoom, like you mentioned, right? Not the obvious ones, but collaboration and workflow and process platforms that really drive visibility and collaboration more than anything. I think the big piece that we've had our customers lean into is managing supplier performance and risk, right? Where they're not able to have their in-person QBRs, their quarterly business reviews, or their in-person planning sessions, because these suppliers outside their four walls for our customers are their strategic partners, right? They can't operate without them, and their effectiveness and their success really drives, the manufacturer's success, our customers' success. So, being able to have that real-time collaboration without a hiccup because they had processes and visibility platforms and performance management systems in place that enabled them to have visibility and really predictive visibility to where performance hits were going to be the most risk, down to a part number for our customers, right? That's very specific to manufacturing, but having that granular view where before you'd have to get into a war room and have planning and scheduling and buyers and procurement and shop floor managers and everyone in the room to kind of talk about, where are we going to miss this week? That's harder to do, without a platform, even on Zoom, right? That's just not feasible.
Yeah, no, the equivalent in our kind of software world are those big, sort of knock operations when, if something goes down and you have a production system, right, and they just get everybody on, right? The network guys, the server guys, and all the vendors that might have touched it or might need to touch it to get it fixed. And it's always a bit overkill, but it was kind of how you had to do it to make sure you didn't leave any stone unturned.
Right.
It's interesting to hear how that works, similar operational necessities in the manufacturing world. I guess, given, we talked about this before, the technology that you have with your clients that you're able to put in place with them. I know when, the snowpocalypse was coming, there were some indications, right? Your Amazon ship times have slipped out a bit, even before the bad weather really hit, there were some indications that people were anticipating it. But, what are your, what was your experience in terms of, companies' ability to respond in advance of the crisis versus when it actually happened? And I'll just get for my own self, I just didn't believe it was going to be as bad as the weather forecast said it was going to be. I've been in Texas long enough. I just was like, right, it'll probably get below freezing, but there's no way it's getting to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Like I just didn't believe it until about the day before, and then I believed it.
Yeah, I think that's generally the case for almost everyone, right? I think nobody really believed, and that's probably an insult to the weather experts of the world. Reality is that that their models were accurate, and it was maybe even worse than they expected it to be. And preparedness in those scenarios is so critical, right? I think for almost all organizations, we were more prepared than we would have ever been because of COVID, right? I think COVID helped organizations, small and large, even government and everywhere, be prepared for having to work at home at the last minute, right? Even if you had already returned to your office, in which case, many of our employees, about 25 to 30% of them, had already been back to the office 3 or 4 days a week. And so getting sent home last minute because of a unprecedented horrific weather pattern, right? We were able to do that, like most organizations, right? It was able for us to transition and not skip a beat. What I was most excited about is watching my team and some of my colleagues and other CEOs, and I'm sure your team was no different, watching them kind of pull together and support each other and check in on each other. And where we had employees that didn't even have cell, much less power or water or gas, right? And we were still able to support and manage and deliver to our customers because of the unfortunate preparedness we had from the tragedy of COVID. Despite not believing the weather pattern, the world and more directly Texas was in a better place to react to it and really be able to deliver to your customer promises and your commitments to your team and otherwise. But I'll go back to what impressed me the most, despite it all, was just seeing how well my team came together and worked together to first and foremost help each other's families. We spent a lot of effort from my leadership team getting some people into hotel rooms where they could, because things were looking bleak for many days, and then helping them get their families in a comfortable place before anything, and then taking care of our customers. So it was just great to see that culture still exist despite 12 months of being apart because of COVID.
Yeah. But I have to say, one of the gratifying things was our clients were also very understanding. Clients who weren't in Austin even, just said, look, take care of what you've got to do at home, right? Don't worry about us for a few days of the week. Do what you need to do, right? And that level of understanding and empathy was really, I think, made a big impact on our team, right? Just you work for clients and you expect them to be demanding of you, right? And it's really when they also show compassion, really makes a big difference for us. And like you, I saw our team reaching out to each other and making sure that people were okay if they needed. We organized some transport to get people out of situations as well. And I had a lot of offers from my team to help get me out of our neighborhood, to somewhere that had power. At our house, we lost power early and it just stayed off, right? But we had water for most of the duration. And, that level of just everybody kind of pitching in to help, which continued even afterward, right? Of people supplying water around town and volunteering. Yep. I saw our team volunteering more for vaccination sites than they would have maybe prior to the snowpocalypse. I think it just activated that energy in the team of, if I couldn't help with that because I was locked in my house with no power and I couldn't get out of the neighborhood, then the next chance I have to help and make a difference, I'm going to take it. And that was really, really gratifying to see on the ground level.
Yeah.
I think I just think the flip side of this though is I think at a local communications level, right? Like we did not get the kind of, other than from the weather forecasters, right? We didn't get the kind of communication we needed to do a better job. And that kind of across companies or individuals, the kind of communication I would have wanted to see, for example, from Austin Energy was not, hey, we're doing rolling blackouts, but our plan is to do rolling blackouts, but if we can't do enough capacity, you could be out of power for days and you should plan accordingly, right? And tell us that early, not after it's happened, but before it happens. And I felt like there just wasn't that level of disclosure. So, our reaction when the power went out was, well, we'll just wait it out. It'll be a few hours and then it'll come back on. And that was the wrong answer. And when it first went out, we could have moved. We could have gotten out of the neighborhood. But by the next day, it was all ice and we were really stuck. So, and I'm sure we're not alone in that, people who just made poor decisions because they believed, leadership in the community, whether it was utility or the mayor, the governor, whoever it was, you believed them that things were changing and they really weren't, right?
Yeah, that piece right there was kind of an ultimate, failure, really. You hate to use that word, but, that was a failure of communication, not having the preparedness that we could have had, right? Right. And that goes back to just like our technology platforms that we offer, right? Mutually, they're all about preparedness and visibility and process and workflow and risk, right? And eliminating risk. And it's unfortunate to not see that, being delivered in such dire needs is when that you're probably going to leave millions of people without power for 3 to 5 days, and could have probably told them. So there's probably a certain amount of unknowns, right? Neither one of us are experts. I'm not an expert, right. But more communication, I think, is always better, even if you're wrong, right? Err on the side of worst case scenario, and right. Give people the opportunity to react and go be with someone that doesn't lose power.
And I think communicating the optionality, right? That this is the current state. These are things that could change to make it better. These are things that could change to make it worse. Right. My example in that case would be our Austin Water, on one day saying, don't worry, water's fine. And the next day, boil notice, right? And you're like, no, those, like, we all could see what might happen, that the water utility might lose power. And if they lost power to one of the water treatment plants, then we would need to boil our water. But for some reason, they didn't communicate that, at least via their social media channels. So,
you called that out. Sorry. No, you called that out very well in your article. You specifically kind of called that as you were keeping up, in real time, where you kind of see what was going to happen with water. And you as a consumer shouldn't be the one figuring that out, and before you read about it or experience it.
I think folks like you and I were running, software businesses or businesses that run software for production use for clients and customers. We know the kinds of planning you do for outages, and there's a cost to that, but the cost of planning and avoiding those outages is pretty small relative to the cost of an actual outage. And I think that's sort of the missing element with, so many of the conversations in Texas around our grid and our power supply is just realizing that, it's a public good and a good for business if the power is reliable, right? That key element in the ERCOT acronym, is reliability, right? If it's not reliable, then all our plans are for naught,
Yeah, it all comes down to, what we talk a lot about with our customers is predict and prepare, right? The ability to have the data and the visibility to be able to predict worst case. And in manufacturing, much like probably in energy and water and anything else, right? You need to be able to have that ability to predict and prepare. But then the most critical piece of that is then to collaborate or communicate, right? Be able to share the knowledge with those impacted. And in our customers' case, where we've helped them, we've got Fortune 100, even Fortune 50 customers that were using Excel and email to predict and prepare their part shortages, which inevitably always led them with line down, right? Their manufacturing would stop and they'd send everyone home, and they would tell their customers they're going to be late. And then they would accept the consequences, and those would generally be dollars, right? In this case, predict and prepare, was tragic, and it was a really horrific outcome of not really communicating and not having maybe the technology or the investment to be able to do that.
Right. Well, and I think that it indicates there probably was a lack of the sort of right process and procedures around the kinds of failures we experienced, right? So, do they have a proper, set of procedures for when the temperature drops that low, and what kind of preparedness they should engage in a week out or when they first see the forecast? And maybe historically they don't. I hope this event was something that will cause everyone to kind of reevaluate and rethink those plans. And I think obviously one change we could make as a grid is to have a market for market for capacity, not just for use, right? So that you can buy into the idea of having a capacity in much the same way that you would in a software sense I want to buy support, which is different from how many transactions I'm running through the software. I want to pay for availability as well as number of transactions. There's kind of
absolutely
different elements of how you pay, right? I think the one sort of weird sense though about this whole thing is just that we were in a way fortunate that we all were prepared due to COVID, in the sense of keeping more food in the pantry, being prepared in a sense for the isolation that was required by the snow event and the ice that followed, even the lack of power. I found we were all bundled up, the whole family, in one room, just to stay warm for 5 days. And at one point we had cell service, so we were calling my parents, and they're asking if we're sort of getting some extra family time. And my son chimes in from across the room. He says, "A little too much, if you ask me."
I knew that was coming.
But we're all bundled up reading. And I think in that sense, we're mentally prepared, to deal with something like this in a way that in normal times, I'm not sure we would have. And I think our pantry would have been empty in a day or two. But certainly we're, one thing we're looking at, Tom, and I wonder if you are, sort of as a family and also as a business, looking at how we can be better prepared for a disruptive event like this, for ourselves, thinking about things like, do we need a generator, or do we have more propane on site, kind of, to use to heat things, or, just some options like that. And then as a business, having a better, we have a disaster recovery handbook, but this was sort of like a rolling, disaster that we didn't have as good of a game plan for, right? It wasn't like an event and now it's over and you're dealing with the aftermath. It was like the event went on for 7 days basically. And so we have some work to do to think through that and make some better plans.
Yeah, I think
you guys going through similar.
We are. I mean, just much like you, right? We have a disaster recovery, playbook, and being SOC certified, right? We've got all those things in place, but also, conversely, right, we're still a relatively, 65 to 70 person organization, right? So, and most of our employees are based in Austin or the surrounding cities. So to that effect, right, we don't have a whole lot of ability to have support, for critical things if we need to get on a call to customer when the city of Austin is completely without power. Well, fortunately, we do have remote employees, even as small as we are, but we're more fortunate than some of earlier stage companies in Austin and other areas. But we have employees all around North America that we're able to really support and manage and take care of our customers. So we had that benefit, but not many organizations are built that way. So for us, yeah, absolutely thinking about how can we get rid of any potential points of failure being solely based in Austin, and having more of maybe an approach of hiring around the country at a broader scale and more focused to do that, right? Not really just being kind of passive about it. So I think that's certainly something that my customer and operations teams are looking at now, and making sure we're able to support from a human element our customers more effectively. But from a technology standpoint, right, we're like most organizations, we're hosted in multiple regions at multiple sites. I think hopefully most companies and most technology stacks are doing that today and following best practices. And so from that standpoint, right, that piece is perfectly fine. But from a human touch standpoint, I think that is a certain risk that we have to evaluate, so we can make sure we're giving the level of service to our customers that we want to give. And then from a personal standpoint, I have 3 young kids, and they eat seemingly every piece of food they can find every chance they get. So keeping up with the food in my household is a problem in itself, much less during a pandemic where we're always home, or during an ice storm. When neighbors when neighbors are raiding your, I'm sure neighbors are raiding your pantry and your fridge. But yeah, it's certainly something to think about. I'm probably more prepared, sadly, don't tell my wife this, more prepared for my business during those events than I am for my personal and family life.
I felt the same way. I felt like we were more prepared as a business to keep operating than I was to either take care of my family or my neighbors, or that matter for our business to really take care of our team. And that's the thing we're kind of reevaluating. Right. It's like we've over-indexed on, because we have to for our clients, we've indexed on things like, having servers and, posted and in different zones and regions and lots of failover and all that kind of stuff that you plan for, and disaster recovery and the like. And then we have people scattered throughout the country. So we have a good distribution of people, but we hadn't really thought through in Austin, we have a really critical mass, right? Almost half of our company is in Austin. And so we never really faced a natural disaster that had that sort of broad of an effect as this one did. Not to mention we have people in Dallas and Houston who are also affected. And
same.
And ironically, an Minnesota where I think hit -25 or something, and he was right.
Yeah, unreal.
There was a lot worse in Minnesota, but they were ready. Right. So.
Yeah, we also have people in Dallas and Houston, and short of the Gulf, right? You don't really anticipate something happening of that scale in Texas, right? Other than hurricanes and maybe the occasional fire, but nothing like this. So then on the other hand, right, it's hard to really point fingers at anyone for not being prepared, just because it's such an unprecedented event.
Yeah. Yes, certainly in the lifetime of our companies, this is an unprecedented moment.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think you can see both of us are thinking about how to take some of the things we learned from the snowpocalypse, if you will, to our future planning. What about, just in general with the pandemic, are there things that have changed about your business that you think you'll take forward, even after everybody is vaccinated and life returns to normal, or normal occasionally masks?
Yeah. And hopefully I don't have a bad connection here. It looks like it's slowing up, but hopefully there's not another ice storm coming. Just kidding. But absolutely right. For us, again, hiring practices, we're now where, we were previously, we would only hire really, local Austin, Central Texas team members, right? And that was just because of our culture was really to be in person and build that culture of community and collaboration. And I think what COVID taught me in the leadership team is that, we have a strong base of team members here in Austin, Texas. And now we're at a phase now where we've been able to scale and grow and really start to look at hiring, the best candidate versus, the best location for that candidate, right? So, and also for our scale, right, it's important for us to have, many time zones of coverage for our customers around the world. So it helps, for us to start looking outside. So COVID brought that awareness to us, and what made that blaringly obvious is we had our best quarter of performance in Q3. So the first, true full quarter of being remote for our organization was our greatest success in company history. And that wasn't just a sales number; it was really around customer delivery and product roadmap development. Our quality, everything from support, development, products, customer success, and sales was at its peak, and we did that all while being remote in the height of the pandemic. So, I think for us, I think now I've recognized we don't need to be in the office 5 days a week. I encourage, and believe that collaboration and in-person time, for 2 to 3 days a week for various roles is critical at our stage. But I'm confident that we have the people and the skill set and the talent to deliver, no matter what gets thrown at us, whether we have to get sent home again permanently for 5 days a week and, until the next time. But so for us, again, going back to, we're going to continue to hire and scale the business just by looking at the role and the person, no matter where they live. And I think that's a huge shift for us culturally. And then alternatively, it's just continual preparedness, right? And really being able to take care of our employees. COVID was hard on our customers and our partners, but more importantly, was hard just on our team members, right? And growing young families and, going through having babies and buying homes and doing all that in the pandemic was, a time for us to support and help, those team members really, go through those major life events while also being locked in their homes. So I think it's important to always just make sure you're checking in on your people, whether you're in person or not, and just having very real conversations with team members and skip levels and just truly asking them how they're doing. So I make a point to try to spend as much time as I can, just, checking in on, them and their families and not really just talking about necessarily work or customers.
Right. No, I think those are great points for anyone running a team or a company, to be thinking about, or even if you're just on a team, right? You can affect some of these changes yourself by checking in with people.
Right.
And you don't have to be in management to have that kind of impact. And, I think for our team, one of the bits of feedback I got after we went remote was from our, remote team members telling me that we were doing a better job of including them in what we're doing and how we're thinking. And, it's kind of an accident of being remote, but we didn't have the water cooler conversations. So the communication was more planned. And,
Yep.
and so they were kind of saying, hey, hope we don't lose that when we go back to the office, that you guys don't sort of forget how to keep us all in the loop as well as you are. And that was kind of a surprise, but also it was like silver lining, right? Getting
that's a very true
benefit
point.
to that set of our community. Yeah. But I think your point about looking after your team is really critical. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one, quite honestly, even myself included, right, is easily, forgotten or put on the back burner. But I think especially during COVID, right, when you have so much going on, but I think that is the most critical to your organization's success, making sure that your people and team members are healthy and being taken care of. One of the things that I've had to learn myself is, Slack, while it can be a good tool, is not a communication tool for all things. There's so many things that, water cooler talk and those things, right? We've always had all hands every week on Tuesday mornings. Those used to be in person, and even today we do have them with a small group in person, and then everyone else is joining remote. But to your point, you have to make sure that is a good experience, as good as being in person, for every team member, no matter where they are. And having gone through that now at a young company age has been really helpful for us.
Yeah, I think those are interesting sort of hurdles to cross, right? And I know there's some companies that just start out remote and they stay remote and maybe don't really confront the in-person versus remote question.
Right.
And I think that works for some businesses, but I think there's also a magic to getting together in person that I'm looking forward to having again, for our team, and soon, I think. But I think for those of our team members that are remote, we love those guys and we love having them on our team, and we want to make sure that they have as good an experience they can have working for BP3 as they can. And so I think to your point, right, when you do the team stand up or the all hands meetings, you really want to make sure that they get a good video feed to look at, and that they can get a question in when everybody else is chatting, and that sort of thing. So in fact,
absolutely,
in our meetings, one of the things that's sort of funny is the minute I turn the recording off for the people who can't make the meeting for whatever reason, right? Then you get the interesting question, right?
Of course.
It's when you say, okay, we're done recording. Yeah. Any other questions?
They don't want to be on record.
Then you get a good one.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've taken to, okay, if we get a good one afterward, we'll just write it down and write the response down too, so that people can get that. But the other thing we've experimented with is using, I don't know if you use Miro or Miro board, Miro, but it's a kind of interesting collaboration space. And so when we're doing a longer meeting, right, we did like a 4-hour kind of kickoff earlier this year, and people could start to collect questions on Post-it notes and, virtual Post-it notes, if you will, and kind of self-serve, right? Other people in the company could answer while I was talking or somebody else was talking and on the mic. And it made for a really interesting kind of interactive experience. Although admittedly, we have some folks on our design team that are really good at running that kind of experience. So I don't know how well it would have worked if I had to run it, but because we had people who do this to run virtual design sessions and collaboration sessions, they knew how to tee it up, and it made for a really good experience for me as a presenter, right? Someone hosting the event. Because at the end, I had a bunch of really good content to go through of like, what kind of questions did the things I said cause to come up in a more interactive context, not just a question of me, but a question posed that other people put their own thoughts onto. And I thought that was like fascinating for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It probably drives for a more collaborative, open dialogue, because people are taking notes and capturing stickies and other things virtually more so than they probably would in person.
Right.
Might open things up, and I haven't thought about it that way, but we have done a number of fair share of our own virtual collaboration sessions, and but admittedly, we've also had some social distance, annual planning sessions that where they're just more critical and so much easier done in person with a small group, of course, but those were critical. But our dev team, just much like yours, right, the product and development, are doing collaborative sessions, every day, using tools. I'm not sure, sadly, what tools they use, but I have heard of the one you mentioned, Miro.
Yeah. No, it was kind of it was one I was familiar with in theory, but I had never used it myself until our team put it. Well, we used it a couple times internally, in management meetings and things like that. But this was the first time we'd used it really company-wide. And there are a couple of things I really liked about the experience, which I think you could use other technologies for, but we got a smattering of, there wasn't somebody hogging the mic, and there wasn't anyone interrupting each other to get a question asked or an answer, right? Right. It could all just kind of be free form. And it also felt like there was a little bit less of like, you can ask all the questions anonymously, like they don't have to have your name attached. So there wasn't an element of like, oh, is Scott going to judge me based on the question I asked? Like, no, of course not. Right. But it's easier to know that if it's anonymous, right? So it led to some great stuff. So anyway, I really appreciated it. And I think those are things that we learn from working remotely. I think you've given some good examples, and I think there are just so many things that we're going to take with us going forward to running our business, I hope better, in a remote capacity, but also augmenting what we do in person.
That is great. And I thank you, Lauren and Scott and Tom, for being part of this conversation, especially Scott and Tom. That was really great to listen to both of your perspectives. We clearly had a failure of leadership on so many levels in the state of Texas over that time period. But it's great to know that we have local leaders in our tech industry who are thinking ahead in advance of what they can do for next time. So hopefully that will happen at the state and local level as well. So want to thank Lauren and Kieley, as well as our other sponsor, Deloitte. I got so excited for this conversation to start. I forgot to thank our sponsors. So again, thank you, Deloitte and Kieley, for sponsoring this event and this program. Thank you all again for coming out and joining us on CEO Conversations tonight. And we look forward to seeing you on our next one, April 12th, where we will have Greg Gilmore from Planview and Kiwi Camera from CS Disco. Everybody have a great night.
Awesome.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Amber. Thanks, Scott. Have a good night.
You too.